My name's Tom Fishburne. I was born right here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I served in the United States Air Force. When I was stateside, I was in personnel. When I got to Vietnam, I was in base security. Well, when I got to Vietnam as a personnel specialist, the first night I was there, the sirens went off and the guys in the hooch said, "There's a rocket attack." And they all jumped up and ran out, so I followed them. And they ran outside and ran into a big sandbag bunker. And it was packed in there like sardines. And the guy behind me was so frightened, he stood there and peed on my feet. And I said to myself right then, I'm not coming back to these bunkers. They're gonna have to blow me up in the barracks. And I found out later I could volunteer to work with the Air Force military police on base security, and instead of being asleep in the barracks, I could be awake and actually have a weapon. And so I did that for the rest of my tour. I would get dropped off at 6 o'clock at night in a one-man sandbag bunker somewhere out looking at the tree line, and picked up at 6 o'clock the next morning. I was there 368 days, and in 368 days, I think we had 170 rocket attacks. The rocket attacks always came at night, so the VC really only tried to come through the wire in numbers during the Tet Offensive in January of '68. That was like something out of a Stanley Kubrick movie. Normally when the rockets started coming in, they would only be 3 or 4 of them before our gunships would locate their origin points. But that night they just kept coming and they just kept coming. And I heard on the radio that the Charlie's in the wire. And so I knew they're trying to come through the wire somewhere on the base. So I am at that point very, very alert, and probably the highest adrenaline level I've ever had in my life. Fortunately, they did not come through the wire right where I was. I grew up always thinking that at some point, for some period of time, I will go in the military, and I ultimately did, and volunteered for Vietnam, which in retrospect was not the smartest thing I'd ever done. But my point being that we went from a time when veterans were honored. I never dreamed that when I came home from serving my tour, I would be cursed at, called a baby killer, and spat on by people simply because I was wearing a uniform. And that was the mood of the country in the late 60s and early 70s. And so, you know, when I got out of the military, I went home, tried to resume my life, went back to college, met a girl, got married, and tried to forget as much of Vietnam as I could. I think the military is an excellent opportunity for a young man or a young woman to not only grow up, learn responsibility, travel, and have some adventure. I was no different than in the past 300 years, millions of young men and now young women. At a time when I thought the country needed me, I served.